Right, well, you heard Linda talking about C-Flight there, and I know multi-screen unification, how we unify the way that we buy as well, programmatic or direct. That's been a big message from Freewheel for several years. So just tell us where we've got to as an industry with that.
Yeah. For those of you who are frequent traveler to this show, you'll have heard me speak about this over the last few years, and I think it's a fair statement. But if it does feel, as Linda is saying, that in 2018 we kind of turn a page. We talked a lot about the power of TV in kind of the top part of the funnel, and how TV needs to adapt to address the bottom part of the funnel. And one of the ways that, at least at Freewheel, we've looked at it is giving our customers and the industry in general the power to unify their screens. Why? Because obviously, if you are, if you are a marketer today, it felt like the only way to reach a particular customer very directly on a targeted basis until now. A lot of the ways, or the only ways, at least from the marketing of some of the digital companies, was to use kind of a digital campaign or social media. And TV was struggling to address the bottom part of the funnel until very recently. And technically, this year we really came about with the power around addressable TV and some of the things that we're seeing in market to come to address, or at least give broadcasters and media companies the opportunity to address the bottom part of the funnel. Obviously, from a marketer standpoint, it's very important. Linda talked about it. I'm not going to repeat what she said, but from a technical perspective, where it's important for us is, we're trying to bring the best methods, or how digital has been very powerful from a premium video standpoint to TV. And as a tech partner to a lot of you in the room, the big part of what we're effectively putting together is how some of the things that work very well for digital video can now be applied to TV. And so that's really where we've come to in terms of unification. And we've done a lot of things, betas, POCs, trials, both here and in the States around, how do you start to look at insertion in live OTT feeds, or how do you start to do insertion in set-top box feed, things of that nature that really truly unify screens, so that if you're a sales house today of a broadcaster, you can really sell your packages, as Linda was saying, around this unified metric.
Okay, and you've spent a lot of time talking about how we sort of increase yield on advertising as well, but with Comcast Technology Solutions, you are now talking about the possibility of maybe, in order to maximize your content assets, we need to look beyond advertising, even if we're an ad-supported company right now, and maybe think hybrid, maybe introduce some subscriptions, and perhaps swap programs in and out of a subscription or advertising window very seamlessly. So just tell us what the kind of the thinking is behind that.
Yeah, so one, if we kind of go back to yield, right? It's a pretty straightforward question, but it has a different answer based on where you sit. The way we look at it is, how do you best combine for you and your customers, the user experience? So how do they engage with your content, and what sort of revenue metric you decide to propose to them? Then there's how do you deal with your partners? Partners being, whether it's a marketer, whether it's a rights owner that has sold the content to you, whether it's a technical partner. And then finally is, how do you optimize sort of your profit? And all these three variables are the yield variables, right? So if you work the best equation for you as a company that maximizes all of that together, or at least the perception of maximizing these three items, you're maximizing yield for your company. What we've realized over kind of call it the past year or 18 months is, it's all fine that we're looking at it from an advertising perspective, and all of us in this room have been focused on advertising for the better part of the last few years and kind of maximizing yield from an advertising perspective. But then you look at, sort of the new competition. I'm not going to talk about sort of Google and Facebook because we spent our lives talking about it in the conference, but think about what sort of the new OTT players have brought to our competition. In the past, we were competing for marketer money. We were competing for attention and for audience. Now we're competing against time. If you're a media company, you're competing against time with people that don't necessarily have an ad experience on their platform, right? Some OTT platform are just sub-funded only, don't have advertising. So if you're a TV company today, you're competing both for marketing dollars against kind of the classic digital competitors, but you're not competing for time against OTT platform. And so if you put those two together, as a media business, you need to rethink how you expose your customers to content. Linda talked about kind of the overwhelming amount of ads that linear can do or can expose us to in some cases. Well, it's the same on digital experience, right? How do you combine best the user experience between what's ad funded versus what's VOD funded or subscription funded? And that's whole part of the yield equation now. That's all part of how you, as a media company, need to address your audiences.
One of the effects of this will be, it's not just that broadcasters might do subscription, but you're hearing from OTT companies who are subspace today, and they're interested in doing some advertising. And, are you able to go out and help them? How on earth do they get into the advertising market?
Well, so the answer is really quite simple. So 2 years ago, 3 years ago, a lot of the funding from private equity, from traditional media funds, have gone to funding these new OTT platforms or these new ways of consuming media. Some of them have been very, extremely successful, spent a lot of money on content. Whether they're making a profit right now remains to be seen. But a lot of those new platforms are, have built themselves into subscription-based companies because one, it's easier, right? You don't have to hire a sales force. You don't necessarily have to set up the infrastructure. You're building a subscription platform. All you care about is, is it going to run? Is it going to scale? If I have a live event around a particular boxing match or something like that, is it going to play well enough, technically supported? And can my subscription platform or technical platform, can that support the transaction? So that's what they've been focusing on in the last sort of year and a half to 2 years. Now they get to a point where, sometimes it's working and, some of them are profitable. But the majority of them have, funded big deals, big rights deal, whether it's sports or whether it's big content acquisition. And they're now saying, okay, is this sustainable in the long term? And a lot of them come to the conclusion that they need ads, right? Not necessarily become a commercial broadcaster, not necessarily become an ad-funded platform, but they need something in between. They need something to complement their subscription model. And frankly, the natural next step for them is to think about advertising and how to do it.
Yeah, and that's the big question. So how to do it? They don't have a sales team. They have no heritage in advertising, and they don't have the tech. So do they just go to Google and say, come on in and we'll do programmatic sales? Or is there an opportunity for the broadcast industry now to go out and do some partnerships with them?
Yeah, look, everyone should be free to do what they want to do, right? But the point is, this is still premium content. Linda made a point earlier on this. It's not about, is it premium versus TV? Is it about this screen versus that screen? People don't make the difference today between whether they're watching Netflix or whether they're watching NBC. They make it about the show, not about the platform. So if you are a media company and you've traditionally been in the OTT world funding, your growth through subscription, and you're thinking about the next stage, you can't go to Google and say, look, I need to fund my growth through advertising. Will you represent me? But if I'm smart and both on kind of the traditional media company side or the OTT side, I want to go with somebody that knows how to sell TV. I want to go with somebody that has experience in selling live TV or digital TV. So I would go to a traditional broadcaster, and I think it's a great opportunity for folks in this audience to say, I know how to sell TV. I know how to package it. I know how to package premium television. Therefore, instead of these, the large amount of OTT platforms out there that are looking for the next step, it becomes a significant opportunity for broadcasters to aggregate some of that new audience, which we've seen as competition in a way. Up until now, we've considered that those platforms were competitors in the way they were, stealing, users and audience away from us. Yes, it's true. They're in a way, they're competing for time against commercial broadcasters. But at the same time, they're a great opportunity because as their model evolve and shift towards more of an ad-funded model, it becomes a significant representation opportunity.
Okay, but why not just leave them to it and let them wither? Or do you think they would just go somewhere else? They'll do it anyway. Well,
I think, consumer is the key, right? Consumers are shifting and have shifted to a new form of usage. The programming that the broadcasters offer, as premium as it is, isn't going to represent 100% of the audience as it used to be. People have shifted now to other forms of platforms. The big question is, are these platforms going to be, going to sustain themselves in the next 5 years? So you could either say, well, you might as well let them be, right, and let them disappear, and everybody goes back to broadcast TV. Is that really going to happen? I don't think so. Somebody else will come along. Somebody else will get funding, and the cycle will start again. So the opportunity is now, because I sit in a lot of these conversations now, where a lot of these platforms, as big, you talk about the very big ones as well as the smaller ones, and their very single question is, help me understand how I can come up with the right hybrid model, whether it's because I need to expand my business to other countries, whether because I want to launch a platform on mobile, whether I have a new connected TV app. All these represent new opportunities for them, and they need to understand the world of advertising, because traditionally they've been very right-focused, they've been very technology-focused.
Okay. And the flip side of this coin is that broadcasters, well, we're already seeing some of them taking some of their content into an ad-free zone, commercial broadcasters. How would the model work for them? So, just run us through how it might work in terms of windowing, or what content goes into advertising, what stays in, what goes into subscription.
And look, there's already people doing it, right? There's a lot of examples in the Nordics, TV2, for example, in Denmark is already offering sort of multiple tier packages to their audiences, an ad-free or sort of ad-free package, a hybrid model of a combination of ads versus subscription for certain pieces of content, and a sub-only model. And so we're already seeing it. Linda's on the board of Hulu. Hulu is a great example of somebody that's looked at it in a different type of packaging and saying, you have a model that is ad-funded, and you have a model that's a hybrid of package. So everybody's kind of trying to move there. Not everybody has, comes from the same starting point, right? You have brands to protect, you have brands to evolve, you have different kind of audiences. And a lot of the trials that we see right now is around audience, right? So people know that different audience consume content in a different way, and therefore they propose different packages to different audiences around advertising or not advertising. So that's generally what we see now.
Okay, now I'm going to open up to some audience questions in a moment, but just one more question first, which is the opportunity for broadcasters to sort of repatriate their content, which is currently on places like Apple for transactional, and they might have a back catalogue with Netflix for SVOD. And if they become more hybrid and they master subscription, do you think they could bring all that under one roof and have all their sort of monetization options in one place?
Possibly. The best we could do is, right now, what I see a lot is if a broadcaster or an entity decides the model they want to use, it's generally somebody or a collection of people that decide where to put the content and how to expose that content based on the model. We're trying to say, look, there's data that can help you with that. Let's not make that an instinctive decision as to what you think is the right decision for your business. There is data to support, your advertising model. There is data to support your SVOD model. What we're trying to do is come up with And for those of you who are already sort of clients of Freewheel or work with Freewheel on the advertising side, you know that a big part of what we do is come up with the right forecasting tool for your businesses. And that's not existed from a rights acquisition and a rights packaging perspective, right? So today, when a broadcaster buys for a euro, pound, a dollar worth of content, the succession across the various rights windows and screens is very complicated to orchestrate, particularly if you add advertising to it. And because we have the data, a lot of it is we are a technical provider on these two platforms, a commerce platform that ties transactions to advertising. None of that data has really been married between the two platforms. And so that's what we're trying to do, is kind of come up with this right forecasting engine for our customers, so that when you buy content and you decide which windows you're going to expose your consumers to, and which revenue model, we can help, one, streamline, but optimize that from a revenue perspective and from a user experience perspective. That's all we're trying to do with, put a little bit of data into that equation.
So you could tell me, if I took one particular series out of subscription and put it in advertising, I would lose this many subs and gain this much ad, and vice versa?
That's the idea.
Okay, and you can do that?
So today we could do that on two separate platforms, right? So today we have two separate platforms that are one on Freewheel, the other one on Comcast Technology Solutions. So the two platforms exist. There are only a handful of clients that use both today. So for those clients, we're working quite extensively with those teams to try and help that. But there is not one engine today. That's what we're working on.
But as a solution, it's available now. Yeah. Okay, have we got any audience questions? I've got lots more, but I'd like to get some audience questions if we've got some. So I'll give you a moment to think. Put your hand up if you have. Is that? Oh, I can't see, sorry. Okay. Well, in terms of how broadcasters can kind of juggle this advertising and subscription, we've got used to a lot of broadcasters just being free with ad funding. Is it going to become confusing as a user experience if we try and mix these two things together?
Well, I think if it's not done well, yes. I think the main thing is it's supposed to clarify things. It's supposed to give visibility into branding of, to your users, where things become clearer for both marketers but also users. So I'll give you an example. Again, different audience or different subset of audience or segments of audience react differently to brands. They might react differently to a sports packaging, a series packaging, a kids programming. So again, it's not necessarily about how confusing it might become if you put subscription versus advertising. It's really a brand management effort. What's confusing right now is if everything sits under one brand and you try to make sense of all these packages on the one brand, that might become confusing for the user. However, if the content drives usage, which it does, and if the type of audience drives platform adoption, we see, and again, I'll use an example of Nent in the Nordics have done a fabulous job in driving kind of different audience to different destinations. And again, using that very different types of packaging or revenue model based on audience and advertising subscription, based on who connects to the platform. And so again, if you're thinking about it from a brand perspective, that's where that confusion could be avoided, right? If people start to build brand as opposed to services under one main brand.
Okay, got any audience questions yet? Okay, we've got at least 6 more minutes, so I'll just keep going then. But do put your hand up immediately if you have one. So for the advertisers, I doubt any advertiser wants to hear people talking about premium broadcasters taking content out of advertising universe and putting it behind subscriptions. We know it's happening on a limited basis. Now, you said that the upside would be that there's OTT and some premium OTT that could come into the advertising universe. Mm-hmm. Overall, do you think it's going to be a net gain for the advertising community?
So I think the advertiser, to get back to your clarity question, I think the advertisers and the marketers in general want to understand, they want to benefit from this audience that effectively moves to subscription platforms. So the moment that some of these subscription platforms open up to advertising, it's a benefit for advertisers. But they want to do it in a way that becomes easy for them to buy, right? So again, right now the complexity is if you're a marketer and you want to reach audiences across these multiple platforms, you have to reach 50, 60 different publishers. Again, if you go back to the initial question you asked me, is this an opportunity for commercial broadcasters? It's a tremendous opportunity if you can aggregate, or if the commercial broadcaster can package the way that these OTT platforms now become aggregated on their own inventory as their own and operated inventory. So that someone, and you look at Sky today in the UK, they already sell for over 100 channels on linear. That's the principle to do the same thing on OTT platform, is to say, can I aggregate all these new audience destinations for users who aren't necessarily accustomed to to marketing themselves as advertiser destinations. So I think there's a great opportunity for advertisers for them to aggregate their audiences.
Okay, we've got time for one more question, which is either from me or from you. So put your hand up if you have one, please. Okay, so this is all based on the premise that there is money being left on the table right now. The whole premise is that we're not fully monetizing our content. And is there any evidence for that? I mean, do you think there is more money out there to come, whether it's from advertising subscription in total?
Well, so let's go back to the kind of first question, right? So we know that there's potentially money to be unlocked if you look at the bottom of the funnel, right? So if TV becomes a more attributable model, right? So if we become better at capturing some of the more local advertising, and we know, again, Sky's done a great job with AdSmart here in proving that point, that there are new advertisers out there that would benefit from a more local model. There's also a brand new type of advertisers who haven't necessarily built their brands on TV yet, because there are new brands. They haven't been to TV. Yet they're very sensible to the audiences that are on OTT platform. So again, if you're an OTT player today and you're a big, you're the Netflix of sports, as somebody has mentioned, and your prime destination for subscription on sports. One of the opportunities is capture the 35 some odd % of audiences that come to OTT platform that are live. We haven't talked about that, which is linear is evolving to, Linda refers to live linear. OTT linear becomes a significant growth. I mean, we've seen, north of 75% growth year on year on live usage on OTT platform. That becomes a very significant monetizable opportunity for a lot of these OTT platforms. It's complicated to do if you're not used to it, if you're not used to managing the complexity of TV, but it's a very significant upside opportunity for these guys to manage. So yes, there's a lot of upside both for marketers to be able to target that opportunity and for OTT platform to be able to grow into an advertising model.
Okay, well, thank you, Thomas. There's a lot to think about there, so thanks for sharing that with us. Thank you very much.